Government in talks with mainland to open up live cattle supply trade. Hong Kong may be under stormy weather on July 1st. And Snowden's father says his son may return to the US on certain conditions.
Hello and a very good evening. Secretary for Food and Health Ko Wing-man says the government wants to open up the live cattle supply trade in a bid to lower beef prices. But one expert warned that even if this happens, there could be a lack of interest from those in the industry. Evelyn Leung explains why.
The price of fresh beef keeps on going up here in Hong Kong. Just last year, the beef prices went up 6 times. Right now, a catty of standard beef costs $100. Today, Secretary for Food and Health Ko Wing-man once again acknowledged the problem of pricey beef and stressed the government is making effort to find a solution. The government is discussing with mainland authorities about opening up the trade in live cattle to competition in an attempt to lower prices, he said. But Ko warned this will take time, as details such as the quality of other suppliers has to be assessed before they can enter the trade. And even if the government does open up the live cattle market, some warned that there could be a lack of interest from distributors to enter the business. This representative of the Hong Kong Fresh Meat Alliance said the demand for beef has dropped because of the high prices. If other distributors want to enter the market, they may find it hard to get supplies from the mainland, he explained. Evelyn Leung, TVB News.
The Hong Kong Observatory is warning that a tropical storm may pose a threat to Hong Kong on July 1st, but the situation is still subject to change. Tropical storm Rumbia is centered around 390 kilometers southeast of Manila this evening and is forecast to move at about 25 kilometers per hour across the Philippines. The director of the observatory, Shun Chi-ming, said according to the latest data, Rumbia is likely to come close to Hong Kong on July 1st. But he added that may change if the winds weaken after crossing landmass over Luzon. He said if people are lucky, the storm will weaken to bring just light rain and provide some relief from the heat. A very hot weather warning was issued today as a subtropical ridge dominating the area brought fine but sweltering weather to the region. The father of whistleblower Edward Snowden said his son may return to the United States if he's given reassurance of his constitutional rights. Lonnie Snowden acknowledged that his son may have broken the law, but doesn't think he committed treason. Alan Booknear reports.
Edward Snowden, a former systems analyst on contract with the National Security Agency, is wanted in the U.S. on espionage and theft charges after leaking details of government surveillance programs. His father, who says he hasn't had contact with his son since April, wrote a letter to U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder saying he's reasonably certain the younger Snowden would return if the Justice Department promises not to hold him before trial or enforce a gag order.
At this point, I don't feel that he's committed treason. He has, in fact, broken U.S. law in the sense that he has released classified information, and if folks want to classify him as a traitor, in fact, he has betrayed his government. But I don't believe that he's betrayed the people of the United States.
Lonnie Snowden says he's concerned that his son is being manipulated by others, particularly by WikiLeaks. Snowden is still believed to be in the transit terminal of a Moscow airport. Meanwhile, Ecuadorian officials say Russian authorities have stymied the country's efforts to have Snowden flown out of Moscow. Snowden has indicated he wants to seek asylum in Ecuador. The Ecuadorian accounts further complicate the already murky understanding of Snowden's status. Alan Booknear, TVB News.
The United States has warned U.S. nationals not to travel to Egypt after an American was killed in overnight clashes in the country. Tens of thousands of supporters and opponents of Egypt's President Mohamed Morsi rallied in a number of cities ahead of tomorrow's demonstrations, which could see millions take to the streets. The build-up to the anniversary of Mohamed Morsi's inauguration as Egyptian president was bound to be a time of renewed tensions. Sure enough, clashes erupted in Egypt yesterday between opponents of the Islamist president and his supporters. Tens of thousands from both sides of the political divide rallied in the capital city Cairo and in the second largest city of Alexandria, where much of the violence happened. There were dozens of casualties, including several deaths. One of those killed was an American citizen, a college student who was reportedly interning at a US non-profit organization in the field of education. The violence also saw damage to property, with officials reporting that several offices belonging to Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood were torched by protesters. Pro- and anti-government demonstrators have been putting on a show of strength before tomorrow's nationwide rallies to mark the first anniversary of Morsi's coming to power. The opposition says tomorrow's rallies will bring millions onto the streets in a bid to force Morsi to step down. Morsi's opponents say the country is fed up with Islamist misrule that has left the economy floundering and security in shambles. They say they have collected 15 million signatures, some 2 million more than the number of voters who elected Morsi, calling for him to resign. But others appear to be hedging their bets, with flights out of Egypt fully booked, as Egyptians and foreign nationals alike leave the country just in case the demonstrations spiral out of control. Given that this week's violence has already claimed the life of an American, the US State Department has warned its nationals not to travel to Egypt unless absolutely necessary, while telling non-essential diplomatic staff to leave. It's also warned Americans already in Egypt to remain alert. Supporters and opponents of Morsi have been skirmishing throughout the week, with sporadic violence reported in cities across the country. And staying on the African continent, the ailing former South African president and anti-apartheid leader Nelson Mandela is reportedly doing better. Mandela's health has been the subject of national and global attention ever since the 94-year-old was rushed to hospital nearly 3 weeks ago. Earlier this week, the South African government said Mandela's condition had turned critical. But current President Jacob Zuma and Mandela's former wife Winnie said the elder statesman had improved. Meanwhile, the White House said today US President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle would meet with Mandela's family, but they will not visit the hospital where Mandela is being treated. Obama is in South Africa on the second leg of his three-nation tour of the African continent. Well, South Korean President Park Geun-hye says she wants to build a new type of relationship with North Korea. Speaking to students at Beijing's Tsinghua University today, Park began her speech with a few lines in Putonghua, quoting a few lines from an ancient Chinese proverb. She then turned to the main part of her speech, which focused on reducing tensions on the Korean peninsula. She said that included resolving the ongoing dispute over Pyongyang's nuclear program. The South Korean leader hopes the North will turn a corner and become a responsible member of the international community. Park said Beijing had a key part to play in ensuring peace on the Korean peninsula, and a peaceful region would boost China's prosperity.
The European Union could follow the US lead in cutting off trade benefits to Bangladesh. Washington made the move in response to conditions which have seen hundreds of workers lose their lives in a series of appalling industrial accidents. Still, the decision by the Obama administration is symbolic, as it doesn't affect exports from Bangladesh's garment industry, which isn't eligible for US duty cuts. The conditions of workers in Bangladesh's garment industry have come under scrutiny this year after the collapse of the Rana Plaza building in April left more than 1,100 people dead. A factory fire last November killed more than 100.
The European Union has welcomed Croatia as the bloc's newest member and agreed to open talks with Serbia about membership. EU President Herman Van Rompuy called it an historic moment for Croatia, the Balkan state that battled Serbia during the 1990s. Croatian Prime Minister Zoran Milanovic said he hopes EU membership will help lift the economy of his country. He also welcomed the EU leaders' decision to open membership talks with Serbia. In Serbia, the country's Prime Minister said the EU decision means Serbia has restored its image abroad. He said the negotiations should help drive reforms in Serbia, the largest country to emerge from the former Yugoslavia.
And still to come in our news. Another suspected threat targeting the next media. A call for more items in daily use to be recycled. And Britain to be the first country to offer 3-parent fertility treatment.
Heidi Klum.
Hi, everybody.
Tim Gunn.
Make it work.
Tonight.
I need you all to wake up right now.
Can I at least put a bra on?
Come as you are.
It's the toughest first challenge ever.
What am I going to do? The competition starts now.
The all-new Project Runway at 8:30 on Pearl.
Why this watch? This watch has witnessed the epic, the world's most famous fortnight, and a century of traditions unchanged. It's heard the hush of the crowd, the whip of the maestro. On the lawn of the court's center stage, it doesn't just tell time, it tells history.
A journey through the wilderness of the young and old. The wind, after a long silence, continues to whisper.
You don't take pictures. You connect. The new pen EP5 Olympus.
Single, hairy, brown female seeks massive, promiscuous male.
Bears are people too. Chris Morgan follows them for a season to see how they live.
Can you imagine the sensory overload that these cubs are going through right now?
Tuesday night. Bears of the Last Frontier at 9:30 on Pearl Spectacular.
A meat cleaver was thrown out from a passenger vehicle outside the gates of the Nix Media building in Cheongkwano Industrial Estate early this morning. It's the third time in 2 weeks that the media conglomerate has received a suspected threat, and police are investigating the case. Police collected evidence from the scene after a security guard found the 30-centimetre-long cleaver outside the company's gates at around 5:30 a.m. Surveillance camera footage showed someone dropping off the knife from a taxi while it was speeding past the area. This came 10 days after a car smashed into the gate of Nix Media chairman Jimmy Lai's home on Kaduri Avenue in Kowloon. A knife and axe were found left on the ground afterwards. And 3 days ago, a truck carrying newspapers published by Lai's company was set on fire. Yesterday, Lai said on a radio show that he believes these actions were carried out by perverted people, targeting him for advocating democratic reform through his newspaper. The July 1st protest rally has become a tradition for many Hong Kong people, with grievances to air since a decade ago. In the run-up to this year's rally, the debate is more heated than ever as groups supporting the government take action against the opposition forces. Rani Samtani has more.
Protesting isn't just for the young and energetic. This group of senior citizens also plans to join the march. This man said he is willing to bear the heat in order to fight for his right to better support from the government, which he says Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying has not delivered. Although people from all walks of life air a range of grievances in the annual rally, the dominating theme this year is the push for universal suffrage. An organizer of the Occupy Central movement, which is pushing for what it calls real democracy, says most of these grievances come from a lack of government accountability.
When we have vote, when we have democracy, the government cannot just be accountable to those rich people. And he has to, or she has to be accountable to the voters. So this is the only way that we can balance the interests of those big corporations with ordinary people.
But this year, for the first time ever, large-scale celebrations for Hong Kong's return to Chinese rule will be held at the same time as the protest rally. One of the organizers of the celebrations, the Voice of Loving Hong Kong